What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York. We are back at the Gramercy Theater, and today we are here with Santeri of Amorphis. Thank you for your time today, man.
No problems. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it was just a little over a year ago you came here with Dark Tranquillity and Moonspell and Omnium Gatherum. Now you're here with Delane. It seems like New York's a favorite spot for you.
Yeah, yeah. To be honest, I was quite surprised that we do the second U.S. leg after 1 year. But I think we haven't been around so much in the past years. We had a break when we didn't come to U.S. at all, basically. So it's now the time is ready, and we would like to come as often as possible.
Yeah. And don't come in the winter again, because I remember you were supposed to come here with Swallow the Sun, and that show got snowed out.
Oh yeah. We learned a lot about the blizzards in New York, even though we are from the land of snow. But but in Finland, if there's a blizzard, everything still goes on and nothing is cancelled. But back then, I think we had to cancel one show in New York, one show in Ottawa, and maybe two or three shows we had to cancel, and then we had to rebook a couple of other shows, and it's really complicated, you know.
But it's nothing for you.
Yeah. The snow is fine, but we were just surprised how everything stops and jams, and you can't go anywhere, and people can't move, you know. But well, you have it so not so often, you know, the blizzard. So I kind of get it.
So your newest record is Queen of Time, which came out last year. Was this record intended to be like a direct follow-up to Under the Red Cloud, or do you think that this record is kind of new in your catalog and stands out?
Well, I like to think that it's a kind of a continuation to the Under the Red Cloud, because we use the same producer and we a little bit put it more effort, starting from Under the Red Cloud to the more complex arrangements, you know, and more musicianship to the music. But to be honest, when I listen to them separately, I think they sound pretty different. So it's more like a mental thing that because we use the same producer, and we just made the songs. We didn't plan any let's make this kind of album, or let's make a continuation to the Under the Red Cloud. But it was just coincidence. But I think they are pretty different albums, to be honest, and also the choirs and instruments what we added later on in the process to the Queen of Time, they make it pretty unique sounding. So yeah, maybe it's more like a mental thing that it's a continuation for Under the Red Cloud, I think, but not in musical wise, you know.
Yeah. Well, what I find unique is because, Amorphis incorporates so many different sounds and really appeals to multiple different audiences. It's fair to say that, do you take a new approach to every album, or at this point in your career, maybe is there kind of like a formula that you stick with songwriting?
Well, we don't actually plan anything, you know. So basically, and there is no like a real formula. Maybe there was a little bit kind of a style when we released Eclipse, Silent Waters, Skyforger, and the beginning of times. The songs were made. Well, let's put it this way: the songs were pretty simple, but we don't really plan anything. So basically, I think all the inspiration and the approaches to the new songs come basically from touring and getting older, and seeing your career. There's more perspective to see where the band is and where the band is going, but we don't really have any meetings where we decide like what kind of music we do or what kind of songs we do, or we just basically compose the songs in the home studios. And I think the inspiration comes from, of course, from the all the music around you, and also all the influences, but also a lot of inspiration comes from touring.
So you don't really have like a preconceived idea when songwriting, right? It happens very organically, and even there's some improvising involved, right?
Absolutely not. We don't have any like business meeting when we think about like where the Amorphis music is going. Absolutely not. No, we just make the songs like very just alone. You know, we don't even compose the songs together. We sit in a home studios, and you build up a song, and then you introduce it to the band, and then if it goes through the process, then there will be some changes structural wise, or a lot of vocal melodies, new stuff, and then the producer steps in and he also brings in some ideas, and basically that's it. There is no planning, there is no big plan. How's the next Amorphis album is gonna sound? At least not in the band. Maybe the producer has some idea, but producers normally don't tell the ideas until we are in the studio actually working for the album.
Interesting. Being that you have so many albums now in your career, do you find it maybe sometimes harder to put a set list together when playing live? I'd imagine you want to try to hit every single point in your catalog, right?
Well, yeah, we've had that problem for decades because we have also that we have a lot of albums with a lot of a lot of songs the audience would like to hear, but we also have like a lot of variety. You know, there's the Karelianismus era, like old school death metal kind of style. Then there's Tales, which is more more atmospherical, still a little bit death metalish. And then Elegy, which leans towards the hippie times, you know, like Zeppelin, Kings the Wall, you know, this kind of stuff. And then there's the Pasi Koskinen era 3 albums, which is more like a psychedelic rock, you know, it leans towards Monster Magnet or something, or anything. And then we have the Tommy Joutsen era. So also that we have a lot of albums and a lot of popular songs, it's difficult to put the set list together, and also the fact that there's a lot of variety musical-wise. You know, totally different music. It's hard to put Sign from the North Side and From the Heaven of My Heart in the same set list, or one after each other. It's really complicated, and also we normally play like 70 minutes every 5 minutes, or sometimes 90 minutes. It's not that many songs eventually, you know. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'd imagine, do you sometimes maybe like adjust the set list? Like last year when you were here with Dark Tranquility and Omnium Gatherum and Moonspell, like that's a fairly heavier band than I would say than Delane, which is more symphonic and cinematic. I'd imagine, do you sometimes maybe like adjust your set list depending on the tours you're on?
No, I have to say we've tried that. You know, we tried it like 15, 20 years ago, like oh my God, it's a black metal festival, or like a March Metal Meltdown, which is basically some sort of a grindcore festival, metalcore festival. We tried it sometimes, like maybe we should add these 2 songs. They are so heavy they would fit, but nowadays, no, we don't do that anymore. I think it has nothing to do with. If you play with Venom, you have to play only Karelianismo stuff, or if you play with Delane, you must play all the pop songs. I wouldn't say we haven't been talking about like that for years, but and it's also there is some songs we have to play. You know, like a couple of the fans expect certain songs from us, so we can't just drop them off and say like, oh, we played only growling death metal because the other bands are. And why would we care about the other bands? Basically, we are here performing to the audience and trying to find new audience, and you know. So, no, we try to just be ourselves without the framework where we are in, you know.
Fascinating. Being the keyboard player, which is a very melodic instrument, and do you need to hear music, like either it's guitar riffs or the rhythm needs to be laid down before you're able to lay down your part, or do you sometimes start things off and maybe the band can write according to that?
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's basically keyboards is based on piano, and I think all the arrangements and melodies and rhythms can be done easily with the piano. So I never thought about it that way, but I must say when I write write a song with a guitar, it's normally it's a little bit more simpler than when I write with my own instrument, you know. But I don't know. I think it's fine, you know. But when we go to the studio and we record one song, I like to play as late as possible in the process, because you never know what's going to happen. There might be some changes, or there might be some new ideas. And if you play your parts too early, as a keyboardist, I get it that the bass player can do it, and drummer, but it's such a melodic instrument, and you are building layers and atmospheres. Yeah. It's better to play in a very late in the process that you absolutely know what can you put there, how much space is there, and what are the upper harmonics, what the guitars are doing.
Well, I feel like with playing keyboards, especially because you incorporate like a natural piano sound, like in The Heaven of My Heart, for example, or even like the outro to Silver Bride. Like if you slightly go one half a step note down, it's gonna be people are gonna hear it one way or another. You can't hide behind the smoke screen of distortion.
Well, that's a kind of a basic principle that whatever you play, it has to sound good and it has to fit into the music and no bullshit. Not like I can't do some funny techno shit in top of the atmospherical amorphous guitar riff. It just doesn't make any sense. I think those experiments we happily live to the 90s. In the 90s, that happened a lot. That keyboardists experimented a lot with different sounds and strange things because of the. I think the music was in crossroads. The techno came and nobody liked anymore the glam rock or old school heavy metal was kind of out, and then techno came, then crossover came. But you never know. Maybe in the future we will try some more experimental stuff. That's always an option, and it's a lot of fun. But at the moment, we try to keep the music pretty melodic, and that it sounds even if it's heavy, there's still some depth, musical wise, and that it sounds like smooth.
Based on what you were telling me, I can almost see Amorphis becoming industrial in the future.
we have had some weird experiments in the early demos in throughout the years. So you never know what's going to happen because we really don't plan anything. But I think the Queen of Time and Under the Red Cloud is it fits us very well now that we have like a couple of straightforward hard rock riffs, and we also have very complex, almost progressive stuff, and a huge variety in the vocal wise, different styles, and so I think that's a better way to see our future than some 90s industrial experiment.
You never know.
You never know.
Tommy, I could see Tommy pulling off a Trent Reznor or Al Jurgensen riff any day.
Absolutely, anything's possible. You can't predict the future, like how you're going to think in the future. You can take a guess, but you can't. Brains, your thinking changes. You can't predict that. So nobody knows what's going to happen, but something good.
Yeah. You never know. Now, last year on that Dark Tranquillity, that was actually my first time seeing Amorphis live, so it's great to get this opportunity again. I thought it was a completely different experience than just simply listening to you on my headphones. For you, how different of like a state of mind are you in playing on a stage versus like in the studio or a practice space or anything like that?
Well, I think the whole point is to perform live, so that's the fun part. Being on the stage and play the songs to the audience and play the songs with your friends and enjoy the moment. But to be honest, I don't really enjoy, working in a studio. Yeah, it's pretty horrible, and it gets more annoying every year. Of course, it gets easier, but still, the less you like it, the more albums you make because. It's a hard work. It's a hard work, and it's really have to concentrate and pay attention what you're doing, because when you put some shit to the album, it's gonna be there for the rest of your life. So I would say the fun part is to perform the shows, and luckily we have. At least I have a principle that when I play, I have a certain amount of space for improvisation. So I don't play like a machine every time. There's a lot of improvisation, and there's also all the solos are basically before the solo starts. I really don't know what's going to happen. It's not like rebuild. It's basically improvising.
There you go.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
So it's like a different experience every time. No matter how many times you see Amorphis, it's going to be different every time.
I think so. Yeah.
And I have two more questions for you. Being a band, I've asked this so many times, but being a band from Finland, like I've interviewed Omnium Gatherum, I interviewed Tarja, I interviewed Lost Society, so many. Obviously, Finland's a metal capital, but I also think it's very diverse. Like Children of Bodom sounds very different from Nightwish, which sounds different from Him, which sounds different from you guys. I'm just curious. I forgot where specifically in Finland you're from, but was there like a scene that you guys were active in, or were you mainly focused on getting outside of Finland more to get Amorphis' name out there?
Well, of course, there was a scene, but a pretty small one, in the 90s, like maybe some bands played together just to get the shows, You have to hook up with similar kind of bands or at least a little bit similar kind of bands to get the shows. You know, it was very difficult when you were young. You just couldn't get a show. You had to find out where the scene is to get to the stage. But for that, probably all the Finnish bands are pretty unique sounding from each other. Is that I like to think that it's such a small country, so if you start copying somebody or you don't have like personal style, it's so small place, everybody will know anyway who was the original. You know, and then you won't get respect. Like of course when the hymn started to sell in Germany, there was a hell of a lot of small bands, new bands who suddenly sounded like him, and everybody was singing like Ville, but they never broke through because everybody knew that what's happening. They just wanna kind of copy or make similar. Copying is maybe a little bit wrong word, but they like to play same kind of music.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I find that unique because in New York, the hardcore capital of the world, Agnostic Front, Cro-Mags, Sick of It All, all those hardcore bands were kind of copying a similar style, and that's what made a scene. I find it unique that the Finnish metal scene kind of thrived more off diversity.
Yeah, I think Finnish bands, to begin with, all the at least the bands who succeeded, they are pretty. They have their own style. They don't sound like anything else. Well, think about Iron Maiden. Yeah. I don't know any band which sounds like Iron Maiden except Iron Maiden or AC/DC. Yeah. Or Led Zeppelin. It's kind of like a classic thing but I of course understand that if there's a scene for a certain type of music, then with a quick listen it might appear that all the bands sound the same, but when you listen more you find the small details and you find the personalities.
There you go. And the final question I want to ask you is my favorite question to ask every artist, because it's always the hardest question for every artist to answer. How do you know when a song is done?
When I get the CD from the print, then it's done.
All right, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Every band on your label always answers that the same way.
Well, that's the truth.
Yeah.
Brutal truth.
Yeah, there you go. I always get like, a song's never done. It's only a band. And so I'm glad I got a more upfront answer this time.
Yeah. Then it's done.
Yeah, there you go. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. It's going to be a crazy sold-out show here tonight. Is there just anything else with Amorphis you would like to promote in terms of tours, or can we be expecting some new Amorphis going into 2020?
Well, I have nothing to add, but 2020 we will be 30 years old band, so it will be 30-year-old anniversary, and we're gonna do some shows, at least in Finland and in Europe, and I certainly hope that we will be able to present 30-year anniversary show also in America, but future will tell.
All right. I'm really excited to see what that anniversary would bring. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody, we are here with Amorphis, Queen of Time. Pick that up if you haven't already. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We'll see you next time.